is Alex Sheikman, and I've been involved with comic. Well, I've been a comic fan for a long time, and I've been drawing for a long time. But I didn't really take it too seriously in the beginning. When I was 19, I did my first comic book. It was called Moonstruck, and it was during the black and white craze in the 90s. I think the company went out after my comic book came out, but that was my first exposure to actually seeing my work in print, and that was fun. And from there, I worked as an assistant for a while, and then I actually got a chance to work at Marvel for a very short time. I think somebody kind of got me for a couple of days, and I did a short story in Marvel Comics Presents. It was the weirdest thing. When it actually came out, I was really disappointed in the quality of my work, so I ended up leaving comics for a while. I just didn't think I was good enough to do the kind of work I wanted to do. So I ended up leaving for a while, and I worked for White Wolf Games, which was supplying illustrations for their game manuals. I've done that for a long time. I think I've done that for about 8 years or so. So in 2004, I was part of an artist group. And one of the artists there was Ryan Sook. And Ryan Sook at the time was working, he was already working in comics for a few years, and he brought in pages. He just got a new story. He was working on a book called Arkham Asylum. And I got to see the pages. I got to see the script. I got to see the pencil pages. I got to see the ink pages. And seeing those pages really fired me up. I just wanted to do comics again. I felt like I learned enough about drawing at that point, and about meeting deadlines, and about working with editors and working with art directors, and just picked up some new skills in drawing. And I wanted to tell stories. I didn't want to tell stories in illustration. I wanted to tell stories through comics. And so really I kind of credit that artist group and Ryan's work to firing me up to do comics again. So in 2004, I kind of went out again looking for comic book work, and it was tough. It was really tough. But again, I kind of lucked out. I ended up writing my own story and drawing my own story called Robotica. I ended up finding a publisher, Archaea. I ended up doing 2 volumes of that, 2 collections of that. So as time went on, the time that I invested into Robotica ended up maybe not paying off in sales for Robotica, but it paid off in work that I received afterwards from it. One of the biggest projects I got out of it was working on Dark Crystal. It was a 3 graphic novel project, and it's supposed to be a prequel to the movie. I saw the movie when I was younger, and I really liked it. I really liked the fact that it wasn't just a fantasy story. It was a story about good and evil, and it had some very interesting things to say about nature of things. So working on it was great, especially since I got to work with Brian Froud. And Brian Froud was always one of my art heroes. When I was younger, one of the things that I really enjoyed was his book that he did with Alan Lee called Fairies. So, jump ahead 20 years, and here I am, I get a chance to exchange some emails with the guy and express my appreciation of his work and get some guidance from him about this particular project. So that was really an interesting thing. And the project itself being such a big project, at least a big project for me, being 3 books, was something that helped me to understand or develop confidence in how to create page after page of artwork, how to create 90 pages worth of work in 4 months and meet the deadlines. And the deadlines are important. What I started understanding is that as a penciler, the second step. The first step is a script writers, and then after that, the second step would be the penciler. There's the coloring, the lettering, the actual formatting of the work that needs to go on. And if I'm late, it basically goes down the assembly line. Everybody else is late getting paid. So part of it is, there's some pressure there to maintain schedule. But, I find that exciting. I actually find, working ahead, it's kind of like project management, right? You get a project that you got to do. You know what it takes to create a certain amount of work or a certain amount of product. And then you try to schedule it, and it's like a big puzzle. You try to put it all together so that everybody eventually comes up to speed and everybody is working and everybody is satisfied with the workflow. So it seems like no matter how long I work doing comics, every project brings something else. I learn something else from it, whether it's a new technique or a new part of the process. And I look ahead and I know that there's just tons of stuff that I still to learn. Even just the fact that computers are in the mix now. the way that changes the process, the way that changes the process of workflow and the actual creation of the artwork is pretty incredible. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff going on. So I think, funny enough, comics are not selling as well as they used to. They used to be that comics sold in millions, then in the 80s comics were selling hundreds of thousands, and now one of the best-selling books, like Batman, is selling 50,000, and that's supposed to be really good. You know, there used to be, like when I did my first comic book in the late 80s, it was a black and white comic book. It sold 10,000 copies, and that wasn't good enough. You know, the book pretty much got canceled. Now, if a book was selling 10,000 copies, the publisher would be just feeling great about it. But even though I think the business of comics is weird and I don't quite understand all of it, and I know the comics aren't selling as well, this is one of the most exciting times to be in comics, because I feel that there's so many different creators with so many different styles of not just drawing but even storytelling. There's so many genres out there. There's so many different books. It's really hard to be aware of all of it, because the previous catalog that lists all the new comics, it's a couple of hundred pages long. It's almost impossible to go through every month to see all the new books, to see all the new talent that comes out. And I don't exactly know how things are going to work themselves out, but being an artist who's not really attached to any particular company, I find that exciting. I worked on a fantasy series, I worked on a historical fiction series, I look forward to working on a superhero series. I just think that there's a lot of opportunities available, which sounds odd, because if I say that there's less sales, it's kind of funny to say that there's more opportunities around. But I feel very optimistic. I feel like there's a lot of interesting things going on.